Thank you so much for coming on, man. Let's just start with some introduction and then we'll go from there. Get some questions.
Sounds good. Well, thanks, Kevin, for having me on the podcast today. Super excited to just be a part of what you're doing with the Reality of Realty Podcast. For me, again, my name is Anthony James. I've been in the real estate space for the past 22 years. Started back in 2002. I was a young, eager 21-year-old ready to conquer the world and get into real estate and make a bunch of money. Found out real quick it's not that easy. And I'm sure that's a little bit about what this podcast is about. There's a reality behind real estate that I think the audience wants to hear and learn about. And hopefully I can share a few thoughts here today with you.
I love it. Absolutely. You have so much experience since 2002, you said?
Yep.
That's awesome. Man, so much value. I can't wait to get into it. Okay, well, let's just start with the first question.
Sure.
What initially drew you to the real estate industry in 2002 and how has your passion for it evolved over the years?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with just a little background in my upbringing. I certainly did not come from a family with money or even a family that owned real estate. So my understanding of home ownership was really non-existent. So by the time I got out of high school, I was determined to kind of carve a path and go to college. So I relocated from the Monterey Bay up to Sacramento, where I attended Sac State. Again, I wasn't on scholarship. I didn't have grants. I took out a small student loan. I didn't have family sending me a bunch of money. So I kind of had to work my way through college. So I got a job at PF Chang's here in Roseville and was serving tables. And so it was one, lunch shift that I was working. I was serving a table of gentlemen that were having a business meeting. And at the end of the lunch, one of the guys handed me his business card. He was a manager for REMAX Gold. And he said, "Hey man, you got a pretty cool personality. Have you ever thought of real estate?" And again, in that moment, I didn't even know what that meant, right? Like real estate was a foreign concept to me, other than it's a place where you live. I didn't really understand the home ownership dynamic or the investment dynamic. I didn't know anything, right? So I was like, "Oh yeah, that sounds interesting." I'm a business major at Sac State. I have aspirations to do something. I don't really know what it is yet. I'm 21 years old, but I'll give it some thought. So I took his business card. And 6 months later, I was licensed and working for REMAX Gold. So my early inspiration of getting in was really just driven once I started to learn and I was going through, the licensing process and doing research and understanding what's potentially possible within the real estate space. For me, I got real honed in on the money. I wanted to make lots of money. Right? That was my passion. I was like, man, I came from no money. I have no money. This business, I see a path to make a whole lot of money. And so I'm in. So that was my early motivation. It was really kind of by chance, right, that I had this interaction with this gentleman at the restaurant. But my early motivation, honestly, was to try and make money, to try and change the trajectory of my life from what I was used to growing up.
PF Chang's was just like the start of everything, huh?
Yep.
So this guy just saw something in you, liked your personality, and just next thing you know, you're just on that trajectory. Nice. So you went to Sac State, graduated Sac State, so you put yourself through school with real estate and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So, the early years of my real estate journey were challenging, right? I was 21 years old. I had no experience. I didn't know anybody in the Sacramento region other than a handful of other 20-year-old friends that I was going to school with. And so my early years were filled with challenge and tribulation, right? Like I had no experience. I had no resume. I hadn't sold any homes. I didn't have a network to tap into. So it was a struggle, quite frankly. I mean, it was really hard to get going, especially in my 20s. So for the first few years, I was kind of trained up by a team leader in one of our offices who was heavily focused on Mike Ferry coaching. So if you're familiar with Mike Ferry, it's all about, smile and dial, pound the phones, make contacts equal contracts. I mean, I got one-liners for days here, but it was a high sales environment, right? Like I'm going to put you on the phones. You're going to make calls and call on FSBOs and expireds and go get listings. And so that was my introduction to the real estate industry at 21 years old, which was a listing focused prospecting for FSBO and expired type of strategy to build my business. So if you're anywhat in the game of real estate, and you understand what FSBOs and expireds are, it's a tough sell, right? FSBOs, for sell by owners, they're not using an agent, nor do they want to, and they certainly don't want to pay you. And expired listings are pissed off sellers that have their properties listed that are now expired and now they're wondering if they're even going to sell their house. And so both of those conversations are challenging enough. And then you layer on the fact that I was 21, had no experience. I had to learn pretty quickly what I was going to sell and how I was going to position myself. And so for me, I really leaned into and leveraged the REMAX brand, a consumer brand that, by and large, most consumers are familiar with. That brand of REMAX is out there with a McDonald's, a Mercedes, a BMW, those types of brands. In the real estate space, REMAX is that brand. And so I was like, all right, like the consumer knows REMAX. So I'm going to lean into that and really sell what the REMAX brand is and how that exposure and branding can bring more qualified buyers into their home on that listing transaction. So that was my pitch. I didn't have my own personal experience. So I leaned into REMAX. I studied scripts, dialogues. I would literally record myself at night, falling asleep to scripts and dialogues of myself giving presentations so that it would really get ingrained into my psyche so that it became more natural when I got on a call or when I got to the kitchen table and it was time to give that listing presentation. So that was my whole process. I just got good at scripts and dialogues and understanding my value, partnered with the brand of REMAX. And I went out there and listed houses. And after, a year or so, I got decent at it. I'd list 2 to 3, sometimes 4 houses a month with that strategy. Keep in mind, rewind 22 years ago, home prices in the Sacramento region were not what they are today. They were much, much less. So selling, 4 homes in a month wasn't like I was making, big bucks. I was making good money for a 21, 22, 23-year-old. And it was enough money to help put myself through school, pay for my education, pay for my housing. I eventually bought a couple of units here in the Sacramento region before 2005. And then 2006 and 7 and 8 came. And that was obviously a game changer and a challenge. And I'm sure we'll talk some about that today as well.
Oh, yeah, I hope so. Well, so can you share maybe some key experiences and challenges you faced during the 22 years at REMAX so far, and particularly
Yeah.
transitions from sales associate to the manager and broker on record, president of REMAX Gold, Northern California?
Yeah. Well, really already kind of touched on that first challenge, right? Which was my early 20s, being young and inexperienced and not having a resume. And so figuring out how to overcome that, again, we talked about leaning into the brand and understanding my dialogue and my value proposition. That was all really important in those early years to go after that business. And then, like I alluded to, right, the second challenge was the Great Recession. So when 2000, and I remember it like very vividly. I'm actually sitting in the same office that I was sitting in when I had this moment back in 2005. I think I had 7 or 8 listings, and all of a sudden it's like a light switch and nothing was selling, right? So I had all these active listings and nothing was moving. And it was crazy because prior to that, it felt a lot like this market. You get a listing and, within a weekend or a week or maybe 2 weeks, I mean, you're getting an offer or maybe multiple offers. And so that was a big like shock for me. The light switch was turned off. Listings were not selling. We go into 2006, the recession is kicking off. And here we go. And so that was a massive challenge. I decided in 2006 to relocate to San Diego because the business was in the tank. I had just graduated from school and I was ready for a change. And I was like, all right, like business sucks and the beach sucks. And I'm 25 or 26 years old at the time. So let's go to San Diego. So I moved to San Diego. I worked for a 1031 exchange accommodator. And within 18 months, that exchange accommodator company went out of business because in the real estate space, 1031 exchanges work when you have equity, right? So as the prices were declining, 1031 exchanges were becoming less and less really a vehicle that investors were using because there was not much equity to move around. So they closed the doors on the operation. I was unemployed and trying to figure out what my next move was. So I kind of went back into the restaurants for a little bit, some side hustle stuff. And after about another 6 or 8 months, I just decided, I said, man, I got to figure out this real estate game. Like there's so much opportunity. The market sucks right now, but I got to figure it out. And so through that process though, of those first couple of years of the recession, I got hit hard. I mean, I lost both of my properties to foreclosure. And the most embarrassing thing, quite honestly, was getting my car repossessed, right? Because I was driving around this big fancy whip. And then one day they come knocking on the door, take the keys and it's gone. And the next day I'm driving a 1987 Acura Legend with 287,000 miles on it and a driver's side door that won't even open. I have to keep it cracked to reach in and unlock the door, right? So it was a crazy time, but I was determined. I'm like, man, if I can just stick it out in this crappy market and be smarter about what I do with my money when I start making money again, then I know that eventually this market will shift and get better, and I'll be perfectly positioned, to take advantage of an upswing in a market. And so that's just what I did. That was like the second big challenge was the Great Recession, and just navigating that and persevering through it and experiencing financial hardship, and, figuring out what I needed to do to get smarter with my money. So there was a lot of learning lessons and bumps and bruises along that journey. But by the time things started to improve in 2011, 2012, I had relocated back to the Sacramento market with my now wife, Nikki, who's also a real estate agent with REMAX Gold. And we were kind of a husband and wife team, and we were determined to like plant our roots here in the Sacramento region, start our family business, and life would be great eventually at one point in time. So that was 2012 when we relocated back, and then in 2013 I got into leadership with the organization. And then for the last 11, 12 years or so, I've been on that leadership track with REMAX Gold. Started off as a manager, and then ran and led different offices, opened a couple of offices, kind of worked my way up the corporate ladder, so to speak. And in my last position, I was became the president and broker of record for the entire operation for REMAX Gold in Northern California. So that was an incredible ride. I learned so much just around brokerage operations and what it takes to grow and retain and create healthy real estate brokerage environments. And so it's been a fun journey. Now I'm obviously doing something different. We'll talk more about that in a minute though. But all along the 22 years, man, plenty of twists and turns and bumps and bruises. And quite honestly, we're right in the middle of another massive shift in the marketplace that is certainly disrupting things and causing some pain in the market, which is of course the NAR settlement. Literally all that stuff is underway. The dominoes are falling. Next week, MLSs are changing. And the week after that, the settlement date is finalized and all the change has to be put in place. So that's a whole nother can of worms that we're experiencing in the industry right now. I think the good thing that I feel like I have is the experience now, right? And the perspective, recognize that, okay, like if you're prudent with your finances when the times are good, and when the times are not so good and things are changing and the industries is being disrupted, well, then you can, better navigate and work your way through those storms when it comes to you.
Big time. Yeah. You've been able to or weather the storm, as you say. But I gotta say, just the going back to, the recession and what you went through, like a lot of uh people probably just gave up with the industry, pivoted, did something else. So for you to like stay with it and to weather the storm and get through it and just build from that. And like, it's just, I have to obviously like come such a long way. That's so cool. And a lot of respect for that. I don't know if I would have been able to do that myself.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So what motivated you to step into the leadership role? And then what were some of your proudest accomplishments during your tenure as president?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it really started in like 2009 and 2010 when I decided to get my broker's license, which happened in 2010. And so in that moment, it was really about a resume builder for me. Again, I was still young. I was trying to figure out ways to differentiate myself from my competitors. And so I figured, hey, getting my broker's license is just one more thing I can add to my resume to try and help build value and build confidence and trust in the consumer that I was serving by talking about what that license meant and how I was, maybe a step above or whatever. At the end of the day, like broker's license, sales license, if you're selling real estate, none of that matters. But for me, when I was young, I talked about it, right? I was like, all right, I'm going to get this broker's license and I'm going to actually talk about what that license is and how that differentiates me from my competitors. So in that beginning phase, it was really just a differentiator for me and a resume builder. Um, in the back of my head, I was like, all right, eventually maybe I'll want to do my own thing or open my own brokerage or something like that. So in 2013, when one of the executives here at REMAX Gold kind of tapped me on the shoulder and asked me if I had ever been interested in leadership, I was like, well, yes, I am. I don't really know what that means yet. At that point in time, I was 31, 32 years old. So I was interested, but I still felt young. I had my broker's license. I'm still trying to figure it out, right? Really trying to find my lane and my path to accelerate and find success in this industry. And so I was like, all right, like, yeah, I have an interest. So we had a conversation and those conversations progressed. And after a few months, I was offered my first kind of leadership role with the organization. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't a lot of money. I think it was like a couple grand a month and a recruiting incentive or bonus. And so that was my first job with the organization, was to go out and recruit agents to REMAX Gold. And because I had so much experience, FISBOs, expireds, presentations, scripts, dialogues as an agent, pretty natural for me to just fall into that role, pick up the phone, talk to agents, build relationships, set meetings, talk about the company, talk about the potential impact and benefit and all that type of stuff. So that was kind of my first opportunity where I excelled quickly because I kind of had some of that background in the sales side with my strategy and practice of getting business. And so I did pretty good at it, recruited a bunch of agents my first year. And then they gave me my very first office after that, which was a small office in Natomas. And, quite honestly, I felt inadequate. I was like, man, what am I going to offer? A bunch of seasoned, experienced, veteran agents that have been around. Some of them had been around longer than I've been alive still, right? I was like 31, 32 years old trying to lead an office and, tell these agents how to run their businesses when, quite frankly, I hadn't even experienced the level of success in my own sales business that they were, right? So a good mentor of mine said, hey, look, the leadership path versus the sales path, they're two completely different paths. And so leadership is way different. It's its own animal, right? You don't have to be a mega producing agent to be a good leader. And I was like, okay, I can conceptually get behind that. So that was some good advice that I received where I really kind of took that in and harnessed it and said, okay, well, then I'm going to learn everything I can about leadership. So I started listening to podcasts and reading the books and trying to define what my leadership style was going to be like, how I was going to serve and support the agents. And I just really kind of grew into it from there and just kind of took off with my assignment and kind of graduated into new roles and assignments for the company over time.
And do you think you would even gotten into the leadership role had you not gotten your broker's license?
Yeah, I certainly would have. That was not a prerequisite or a requirement for the role that I was in. But getting my broker's license then positioned me for future opportunities once I got into the leadership vein, right? So I get into leadership in 2013. And by 2018, after 5 years of opening offices and running offices, the previous broker of record was retiring. And so she had been the broker for about 10 years and she was just simply retiring and moving on in her life. And so there was that position that had become available for the company. And because I already had a 5-year track record of strong leadership within the organization and I had my broker's license, I was perfectly positioned to take that opportunity, put my name in the hat, go through the interview process and land the gig, so to speak. Right. So that was an opportunity that I was positioned for because I had that license already in place.
All right, cool. Hey, so you have any proudest accomplishments, proudest moments, maybe a cool story or something about your leadership roles?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Kevin. I guess if I had to try to put words to it, it's not a specific moment or something very specific in my career. It's more about just the resiliency, right? To prove to myself that I can get through a hard time and I can persevere through challenge and chaos and change and everything that comes at you in the real estate space. There's a lot, right? And so the thing that I'm, I guess most proud of is just the fact that I've been able to stick it out and progress through and persevere through. I think that's a quality, right, that agents have to have because when it's good and everyone's high fiving and making money, but it doesn't last forever. And so you have to develop a mindset of perseverance, discipline, and just be, absolutely determined to make it come hell or high water. Right. And that was something that, I guess I kind of had ingrained in me from my youth where I was a high school wrestler and I got my ass kicked a lot, man. Like a lot, especially my first couple of years. I think my freshman year as a high school wrestler, I didn't win a single match, but I kept coming back. And I don't know why. Like, I wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to keep going. Like, there was, it just happened to keep going. And I kept going and kept losing. And then I'd start to win. And then I'd lose some more. And then I start to win. And so, like, after 5 years of wrestling through college and through high school, and then a year in college, I just developed a mental tenacity, right? That sport really breeds. And so I think that has helped me in my career. And that's like a proud moment, right? To say, man, I've stuck it out for 22 years, right? Like it ain't easy. It's been a roller coaster, but I'm still here and I'm still marching forward. And so I'm happy about that, I guess.
Heck yeah, I would be super proud about that. I mean, just the fact that like the failure rate of real estate agents in the first, it's like almost 90% in the first 3 years. So to come this far and build, basically just build off those experiences and the failures. And I agree with you. Like, well, at least in my experiences too, sports has really helped me kind of stick it out with a lot of things in life, and just just teaches you a lot of ways, even though you may not be good at something, but just to be able to finish the drill or be able to finish and keep coming back can take you a long way in life, I believe.
Yep.
Now, let's talk about the Savvy Agent group. What has inspired you to launch the group, and what sets it apart from other real estate teams?
Yep. It's a team, it's a network, it's a group, it's a collective of great agents that come together and collaborate with one another, support each other, and build business together is really what it is. But I guess the inspiration behind it, I, let's see, inspiration might be the wrong word. It really came from a process of self-reflection last year in 2023, where I had spent much of the year just contemplating where I was at in my career, what I enjoyed the most about my journey in real estate, and then what I maybe didn't like so much, and really just kind of take an inventory of all of those dynamics, kind of putting a list together. And it became very apparent and evident to me that the thing that I love the most out of all my 11 years of leadership, right, starting in 2013 till, January of this year, the thing that I loved the most was being on the front lines with the agents. So for the first 5 years of my leadership journey, I was front of the house. I was working in offices with our agents, managing offices, opening offices, leading the office in the trenches with the agents. And then the last 6 years of my leadership, I elevated up in my responsibility and assignment, but it took me out of the branch. So then I became more back of the house, brokerage operation, brokerage supervision, executive oversight, strategy meetings, right? I was more of a figurehead within the organization working at, kind of our corporate office. I'd still be in offices from time to time, but I just craved and missed that frontline interaction with the agents and the relationships that I had built in my career when I was working as an office manager in the offices. So that was really the inspiration. It's like, how do I just get back to a place of doing more of that? Right. So I came to a crossroad, towards the end of 2023, where I had to make a decision. If I want to do more of the things that I really like doing, I have to make a change. And so my options were to go back and be a branch manager and remain employed as a W-2 employee for REMAX Gold, or I could, disengage as an employee, stay with REMAX Gold, be an independent contractor with the company, and build my own office kind of concept, right? So technically, yes, we're called a team, right? But if you're a real estate agent and you're a part of an office, you're a part of a team, right? So technically we're a team, but really what I'm trying to build and the vision is to build my own office, but within the infrastructure and support partnership with REMAX Gold. So that's really what we're doing now. And so we're, 6, 7 months in. And to me, plus 16, I've got a goal of 25 agents by the end of this year, with 40 to 50 by the end of next year, to again, just run my own small office. That's what I did as a manager. I think my biggest office assignment was maybe 75 to 85 agents. So, supporting 40 to 50 agents, taking care of them, being in their corner, advocating for their business, coming up with creative ideas to support their business, drive business, whatever it is. That's what I love doing the most. And so I have found a path, right, using my strengths and my leadership kind of experience to now go and kind of build my own brokerage office, but within the infrastructure of REMAX Gold. It's really a beautiful partnership between what I'm trying to accomplish and what the company allows me to do.
It is so cool. And to say like that, I've had the opportunity to join your team, and it's been awesome.
Yeah.
When you're saying that you are supporting all that kind of stuff, it's tenfold. It's amazing. It's been a short time, but everything's just been awesome. And I just, knowing you just the short amount of time, I'm not surprised at why so many people how many other agents that have worked with me before had just dropped whatever they're doing to come work with you again.
Right.
Because you're just amazing. I really feel glad that being able to work with you.
Thanks, man. Likewise. I appreciate it. It's good to have you on the team, baby.
You got me all pumped up talking about that. I love it. So how would you describe your leadership style, and how do you foster your culture of excellence, collaboration within your team?
Yeah, I know this, my leadership style, and I know the style gets tossed out there a lot, but I'm really passionate and focused on it, which is one of servant leadership. I think my greatest role model for this is Jesus Christ. I am a believer. I love Jesus. I follow him and I look at how he lived his life and how he was a servant leader. He came to serve and not to be served. And so when I look at how, he led his life here on earth, man, it's like, I want to become that type of leader. Now, I'll never be, I'll never be at that level, but there's some great qualities, obviously, that I can look at to say, yeah, I want to embody that. I want to be the type of leader that serves others, that puts other needs first, right? The needs of the agent, the client, the consumer, to put their needs above my own. And, I've really lived my life, my family life, my business life, really with that focus and intention in my leadership journey. And when you do that, man, I mean, everything else comes into place, right? You don't have to worry about, you know, if it's gonna, you don't have to worry about where your next check's gonna necessarily come from if you go out with the right intention to help people first, and the rest kind of falls into place. Now, easier said than done. Trust me, it takes time, and businesses are not built, like overnight. This is not a get rich quick type of business. It takes time, and that's where the dividends really come. Is when an agent can dedicate the consistency over long stretches of time. There's a book that I love. It's called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. It's a super easy read. You're shaking your head. You've read it, right? Like small, consistent daily activities and choices spread out over long stretches of time. They compound themselves and they turn into massive results, right? So it's a beautiful thing, to wake up 22 years later and be like, wow, like I've done some stuff. I feel good, right? Like we've built something here. This is exciting. But man, it took 22 years, ladies and gentlemen, right?
That's
Right. But again, that consistency in my leadership philosophy modeled after Jesus over 22 years has allowed me to be in the position that I'm in now and enjoy, the fruits of my work and my dedication to my career and my philosophy of leadership.
that is so cool. I love that. So, based on your extensive experience, what significant trends do you see currently shaping the real estate market, and how is this savvy agent group to that?
Yeah, well, the old elephant in the room is the NAR settlement stuff that's all well under.
Yeah, let's talk about that
Yes,
for sure.
it's a
Right.
massive shakeup right now in the industry. Lots of opinions, lots of frustration, lots of resistance to change. Right, I think, and that's normal. It's not just real estate agents or whatever. It's people, right? Like we are typically wired in resistance to wanting to change stuff, right? Like I don't know. I've been using the same soap, right? Forever, right? Like the same toothpaste forever. Like I just don't
Yeah.
to necessarily change stuff around. I have my likes. And I think right now in the real estate space, there's massive change that's underway. The NAR settlement that is in place starting August 17th is changing how the game is played. If you're a buyer's agent and you're working with buyers, you now have to get buyer representation agreements signed. That is a term of the NAR settlement. In the state of California, that's going to likely become law starting in January of 2025. So now you're going to be forced, you're essentially already forced to have to put in place a buyer representation agreement between myself as the buyer's agent and the buyer and put in there what the charge for your fee is. Well, that of course comes with a whole different level of conversation that a buyer's agent is not used to. Quite frankly, most buyers aren't used to that conversation either because it's never been a conversation before. It's always been wrapped up and paid by the other side, which is now not necessarily no longer the case. There's still an opportunity for the buyer's agent and the buyer to request and negotiate a credit back to get the buyer's agent compensation paid for, but there's no guarantees in it now, right? So there's a lot of questions about what's going to happen to the first time home buyers that maybe don't have the extra resources. Are sellers going to still offer compensation? All of that is to TBD, and there's lots of opinions around it. So we're going to see how it all settles out here in the coming weeks, quite frankly, days and weeks ahead, but then certainly over the next few months and beyond, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. One thing I know for sure is that this type of change, it is significant and it will wash out agents. Agents are going to quit. Agents quit when times get tough. And that goes back to like, hey, my proudest moment is just persevering through. Right. So agents are going to quit. So if you're an agent, you're watching this, don't quit. Keep going. Figure out how to adapt and persevere through it. Because here's what I believe to be true And my belief comes from some experience through some hard times in this business. My belief is that if we can persevere through this for the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, however long it takes to let the dust settle and come up with the new general practice that we're all kind of used to, if you can stick through it, you're going to come out on the other side and you're going to be perfectly positioned to take advantage of the next beautiful, warm and fuzzy market that we'll eventually likely see again at some point in time. But that is the biggest disruption and challenge that we're facing in our industry right now. And the agents that can push through it are going to do well in the long run, but it's also going to push a lot of agents out because it's too much to figure out, or they're just not making the money because there's, not enough sales to kind of go around, quite frankly, for the number of agents that are in the marketplace.
Yes, good point. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknown. Nobody is really sure what's to come. That's a lot. That's scary for people that aren't making as much money as they want to, or not doing as well. So I could see why a lot of people wanting to jump ship, but just
Yeah.
stick to it.
And let me give some advice, um, for me personally, I have in my career and just in life, sometimes I struggle with pride and ego, right? And I think
Really.
a lot of us can sometimes struggle with pride and ego. So don't be too prideful to get a side hustle that pays your bills while you're still engaged in real estate. I think a lot of agents think it's all or nothing. Well, I'm not doing well here, so I'm just going to quit and go get another job. I'm telling you, there is so much upside potential and so much money that can be made in this business, but you have to work through it and persevere through it. So if you have a dream to go after that big payday in this business, but right now you're not experiencing that and you're contemplating whether or not this is the business for you or not, what I'm here to tell you is don't be too prideful to go get a side hustle that pays your bills and stay engaged in real estate. Because if you can just keep pressing on and stick it out over time with consistency, back to the compound effect, right? If you can just keep doing the activities and get your bills paid, however you have to get your bills paid, then eventually it'll work out for you. I mean, I had so many side hustles, man. I was a DJ nightclubs. I was serving
Right.
tables. I was, you know, mowing the neighbor's lawn. I'll do whatever it took, right, to like survive through those recession years while I was still figuring out real estate. And I was not selling a lot of real estate when short sales and foreclosures were, at their peak. I was selling a few deals a year, but, and that didn't pay the bills. My side hustles paid the bills, but I just kept at it and kept going because I was determined to figure it out.
Man, so cool. And I'm just so lucky. I mean, this going through this right now, being on your team, having you be able to guide us and give us all the information and what to expect. And you always give us what the worst case scenario, just in case type of thing. And yeah, I'm just really lucky that we're able to be, so I'm on your team. I would be scared, wanting probably to quit, but I'm not one to quit, but it would be this is some tough times to get through.
Having the right people around you, mentors, agents, just whatever, right? Like team, just having people in your corner that you can talk to and lean on. It's so critical, man. Like this business is lonely. This is a island type of business. You can go weeks, months, years without even coming into an office, working from home, doing your own thing and not interacting with an office or other agents, just doing your own thing. And so this business can be very lonely at times, right? So being around people that are going to inspire you, that are going to motivate you, that are going to push you forward, it's so important, man. Like when I saw my business really take off was when I just dedicated to showing up. I was like, man, if I want to make money at this, I got to show up like it's a job. So showing up to the office and putting in the hours and talking to the other agents and finding agents that are like, dude, that guy or that gal is crushing it. Like, what are they doing? Right. Like, and talking to them and taking out and just being engaged and being around it. If you're isolated and you're on an island, and you're contemplating quitting, it's going to be real hard, right? You've got to figure out how to have the side hustle, pay the bills, but still engage at whatever level you can.
As a successful professional, and you have a beautiful family and family man. How do you balance being in career with family life? What advice do you have, brothers, in a similar position?
Oh yeah, the loaded balance question. Love it, right? Tricky one, man. Like I don't know if there's a perfect balance. I mean, my experience is not trying to balance at all because it's near impossible, at least from my experience. It's like I have to like figure out what my top priorities are and then like prioritize those things. And there's seasons when I'm all in on fitness and I'm really focused on that and I'll see big results. But then at some point there's something else that's lacking, right? So then I got to pivot and like I'll have a new season where it's like, okay, I got to be so dedicated to like coaching my kids' sports and being a father and a husband. And like, I gotta go all in. Like if you think about balance and you look at a scale, right? Like equally balanced means the middle is reading zero, right? Like I don't want to be a zero. I want it heavy. I want to be really good at being a dad or a husband or a coach for my kids or a leader within the real estate space. Like I want to be really good at that. Well, it's going to take a season where I'm really focused on that and I'm all in with it to the best of my ability. Doesn't mean I ignore everything else. It just means that everything else, it might get a little less and it might be unbalanced, right? But eventually I'll tip the scales back. And it's kind of this teeter totter of, seasons that I go through where my balance is found not in every day. My balance is found over the course of the year, right? It's like this week I'm focused here. Next week it's a little bit more here. That month I'm way heavy over here. And all in all, you're just doing your best and kind of keep the teeter totter, going back and forth. And then over the year, it kind of balances itself out at some level. But going back to the priorities for me, like I have found if I keep my MVPs, my most valuable priorities in focus, then the rest kind of works on it. So for me, God is at the top of it. Um, Health is right there as well. Like if I'm not healthy, if I'm not feeling good, if I'm not working out, then my energy's low and then everything suffers, man. If I don't have the energy to go throw the ball with my kid, like that's a miss. I don't have the energy to show up to a team meeting or an office and like bring the fire, the energy and the passion, like the team's going to lack, is going to miss out. Right. So like I have to stay healthy. I have to eat right and exercise and do all that stuff just to try to keep my energy levels up to perform at the level that I want to perform at. And then after that, of course, it's like family first and then business, right? And then everything else kind of flows from there, right? So
Sure.
that's kind of been my thoughts and philosophies around trying to balance everything.
I like that. I like that. The not trying to balance it because it zeroes out in the middle. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. I heard
Uh,
someone else, by the way, that's not mine. I don't remember who.
it's all right. But you still claim it. So, how important do you think is community involvement and to you and your business? What initiatives or projects are you currently passionate about?
Yeah, I mean, I love being involved in the community. I coach my kids' sports. I volunteer at the church quite a bit. Um, I'm at the schools, volunteering, being involved in the community, meeting families. Making connections, networking, talking to people. I mean, that's a huge part of my day to day throughout the weeks and months and years. So that's huge for me. I think one of the things that I recently did that was really cool. Just talking about what projects am I involved on. So a recent project that I just did and came back from was a missions trip to Costa Rica, where myself and 5 men traveled down to Costa Rica to go serve at an orphanage down there. There's about 35 kids that are lost, neglected, forgotten, abandoned. They live on this, 7-acre plot of land out in Costa Rica with many different structures on it. And there was a need for some men to come down and help build and prep a space for a new workshop that they're trying to put on the site. So going down there, man, was an incredible experience to just be able to go serve, right? Get totally uncomfortable. The bugs were big, the scorpions are real, the viper snakes are down there. I mean, it's like they're real. That's like I'm like, man, I miss my bi-monthly bucks from Finley, from Finley Pest and Termite. Right, like I was, the bug, like I lived with the bugs, while I was in Costa Rica. But again, I was with a special group of guys that, didn't complain. And again, that iron sharpening iron, everybody had a yes mentality and attitude to just go down there and serve, even though it was a little uncomfortable. We worked our bodies. We, got sore. We were physical. We also got to pour into the kids and lead devotions each day at 8:30 in the morning. So that was a really, impactful time for us as a group of men, certainly for the kids and the staff that were there as well. So things like that, man, they're so important. They're life giving, right? So whether it's serving on a missions trip or serving your church or your school or your sports programs, whatever it is, there's so much joy and fulfillment that comes from that. And again, that helps fill my cup and bring more life and energy and passion into just what I'm doing. Right. It's like, man, the more success and things that I can build in the business and career space, the more opportunity I'm going to have to give back and make impact where it really matters, which is people and relationships with people and the impact you can have with people. I'm not going to look back, when I'm 80 years old and regret not working more and making more money, right? Like my regrets will likely be, oh man, I wish I would have spent more time with this person or that person or these friends and family members, right? Like you hear that from the wise people that have gone before us. And so, the one beautiful thing about our industry is with enough time and consistency and energy and effort, you can build significant wealth for yourself, which then in turn, allows my family to give back and to dedicate our time to make those relationships and pour into those community outreach programs in our church and, sports programs and things like that, which are super rewarding, and fulfilling for us.
Filling one cup kind of overflows and the rest part of your life just gets so much more out of it. So what about looking ahead? Or what are your long-term goals for the Sammy Asian Group, and what legacy do you hope to leave in the real estate industry?
Yeah. I kind of mentioned it earlier. The medium term goal by the end of next year is what I'm kind of shooting for, is to have 40 to 50 agents that are part of the group that we're putting together. So that's kind of near-ish term. When I think about legacy, it's not so much specific to like my work life. It's really specific to my family life. And that's, what I am really passionate about. Again, putting family over everything else and, trying to build into my kids and my relationship with my wife and her marriage. That's the most important thing that I want to continue to focus on. And that's the legacy that I want to leave behind to my kids, right? Is the example of, being a father, being a husband. I didn't get into that, but I've never met my father, right? So like for me, being a father and a husband is like top priority. I want to figure that out. I want to be intentional with my time. I want to pour in and teach my kids as much as I can about what it looks like to be a father, a husband, a man. And so that's the legacy that I truly, truly am passionate about and want to leave behind. In the real estate space, my goal is to just serve and support and help impact and inspire the agents that I'm connected to. Even if you're not on the team, I mean, whatever, right? Like I'm just here to be a resource, talk to agents, have conversations, collaborate with as many people as I can. And, I don't know if there's going to be quote unquote legacy left behind, but if there's impact, if something I say or something I do helps somebody even an ounce, that's awesome. I'll be happy with that on the business front.
Oh, you've already made an impact in my life, so I can only imagine what you've done with so many other people in your career. So
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I don't doubt that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hey, so we're kind of running out of time. Is there anything else that you'd like to cover? Anything I missed or you wanted to talk about?
No, man, I feel like we covered quite a bit. Again, I just want to thank you, Kevin, for first and foremost, for just trusting to partner with me and the group and be a part of REMAX Gold and what we're doing here. I look forward to getting to know you further and supporting and working collectively with you. And I appreciate just the opportunity to be on the podcast. I've watched a couple of the episodes. I know your vision and the passion that you have for this business and this space. And so it's been an honor and a privilege to just be here, chop it up with you, man, for an hour or so.
Man, I really appreciate that. I really appreciate the support. You're always there, and just coming on here, like, who knows if anybody's gonna watch it, but just the fact that you're supporting me, and it just means a lot, and I really appreciate that.
You bet, brother.
I'm excited for the future, being on your team. So
Yep. Well, I appreciate it, man. I've got a soccer scrimmage to get to at 3:15. So
nice,
that
nice. All right, man.
let's go.